Hakadosh Boker Or Shavua Tov Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph 47a1. We were just speaking about the entire case of that if a person is going to come, Amar Rabbi Rav Huna says Rabbi name of Rav Huna. If somebody comes to his friend and he has money in his hand and he tells his friend, "Sell me my chefetz with this money. Sell me this chefetz that you have, this object that you have. Sell it to me for this money." So he gets the money in his hand. And he doesn't even ask how much it is. So imagine, you give me money. I don't even count it. I don't even ask how much it is. Boom, I just take the money. Kana. He acquires it. Nobody can actually retract on the sale. But there's going to be a problem of ona'ah, which means that if it wasn't going to be the shovi, right, but if it was going to be lacking a sixth, so therefore he's obligated to actually come and pay the sixth. Because remember, there's a problem of ona'ah. Okay? Kana, what does that mean, kana? Even though he didn't do mashicha. The kevan de lo kapid, because since he's not makpid, so kana is going to acquire it. The chi chalipin dami, so it's going to be like chalipin. Sheyesh alav, right, onah, that he does have onah. De mecholi be'elu kama, because he was actually saying that I'm going to sell it with this. So Rav Abba amar Ravuna. Rav Abba comes and he says, Ravuna, mecholi be'elu kana ve'en lo alavana. You're right, it's a different girsa. Not that there is onah. There is no onah. Remember, the concept of onah is that once you're going to have a case where a person has onah, well, that means it was going to be overcharging or undercharging a 16.7, I don't remember how much percent. It's a shtut. A shtut is 1/6, which is around 70% or whatever it is. So therefore, there's going to be onah or not. So there's a machloket over here. Is there going to be onah or not? So says the Gemara, pshita, it's obvious. Damim, when we're talking about right now money, and he didn't even pay attention to the amount of money they was giving him. And he said for sure that he's going to acquire it because it's like chalipin. So chalipin makpid alein. If it's going to be chalipin and he's going to be makpid, what's halacha? Meaning a guy comes and he says, okay, fine. The opposite case. I'm going to give you the chefetz as chalipin in order to acquire it. Now he's makpid in how much money are you going to give me and how much is the value. So what's halacha? Is there now or not? Right? And therefore, you're not going to be acquired until you do mashicha. So Amar Ravada bar Ava says Ravada bar Ava Tashema, we wanted to come in to bring a proof. Hareshaya tofes parato. If a person is going to come and he's going to be tofes the para, the omed. So imagine you grab your para, your cow, and you're in the shuk in the marketplace, and the friend comes and he says paratecha lama. He said, why did you bring your para to the shuk? La hamor ani tzarich. He says, I need a chamor. He says, okay, yesh li chamor. I have a chamor for you. Shani noten lecha. I'm going to give it to you. Paratecha bekama, how much is your para? Kach bekach, this is the amount. Chamorcha bekama, how much is your chamor? This is bekach bekach, this is the amount. Mashach bala chamor et para, the second that he does meshicha, velo yispik bala mishoch et chamor. Ad shemet chamor, the chamor died. Lo kana bala chamor et para, he does not actually acquire it. Shemamina, we learn from here, that means even though one of them did the meshicha, one more time. You brought normally the para. It right away. Exactly, but here, only one of them did the kinyan, not the second one. Okay, makes sense? Only one of them. It was a bala para, bala chamor. The guy brought the para to the marketplace. The chamor, he had it at home. So he went and he did the meshicha on the para. And then the chamor died. So he says, Shema mina, we learn from here, chalipinu makpid alehen, lo kana. To do with chalipin and you're makpid on it, but here he was asking him, how much is your chamor? How much is your para? How much? So therefore, he says, he's not going to acquire it. So Amar Rava comes and he says, atu chalipin, says what? The chalipin we're talking about fools. What's going on here? They're not makpidim. They're always makpid on chalipin. And therefore he's going to be a kana. Here, what are we dealing with? The Elmaleh, that he comes and he says, the Elmaleh hamor bepara vetle. We're talking about the chamor is going to go with the para and the tle. Umashachet the para v'adayin lo mashachet the tle. And he did meshicha on the para, but not the tle. Telo havale meshicha me'alya. That it's not considered a meshicha me'alya. Right? What does that mean exactly? Because basically, since he said that he was going to acquire 2 for 1, and he only did the meshicha on 1 and not the second one, so that's why it wasn't going to be good. You have to do them both. And once you did both, then it's going to be okay. Amar Mor says, Mechor li be'elu. If a person has money in his hand and he tells friends, sell me your object with this money that I have, kana, he's going to acquire it. Yesh lo alav ona'ah. He says you're going to have ona'ah. So maybe Ravuna holds then that matbi'ah could be acquired with chalipin, right? So answers the Gemara, no, it's not true. He says Ravuna holds like Rabbi Yochanan, that he says mina Torah, money is going to acquire even by metaltalin. So why do they say you have to do meshicha? It's a gezerah. Maybe he's going to tell you like what we learned right now. That means biblically, money acquires everything. But midrabanan, they made a decree that if not, you're going to say, your wheat it got burnt over there. So minta deshchicha, anything which is going to be common, which is these things, they made a decree. But something which is not common, right? For example, this case, right? He says they did not make such a decree. So Elmaleh,
what's it a common occurrence?
Anything to do with the fruits and the things. So now the Gemara is going to say, Elmaleh more Huna, Bereder Nachman Ravashi. Says more Huna, the son of Nachman to Ravashi. Atun hachi matznita. You guys are learning it from like this, but Anan, but we learn it in a different format. Meaning you guys were learning it as if it was a question and then an answer. No, we learned it mifurash. What was mifurash? En matbea nasa chalipin. Money does not become chalipin. That's it. So, yeah, you're done. You're done with that. Okay? Fine. Next. Bame konim. How are you going to come and acquire? Which means now we're going to Kinyan Sudan. How are you going to acquire the Kinyan Sudan? Rav says, Bekelav shel koneh, with the utensils of the one that's making the acquisition. So it's good for the koneh that he wants that he should make the acquisition. So he should actually finish off the job. Levi says, Bekelav shel makne. It's a kelim of the makne. Yeah, the kelab of the makne, right? Just like we're going to say later on. What does that mean? Right? For example, right? This, by the way, is a very famous concept. Who does now the acquisition? Is it the one that's the buyer or the seller? Yeah, that's what we're asking, right? Is it the one? So Rav comes and he says it's the one that's acquiring it because it's good that he wants that it should be an acquisition in order that it should finish off the job, and therefore it's already there. Levi says it's with the makne, that he's the one that's giving the Sudan, because we're going to say later on, and we're going to explain it.
No, they did not give a reason for either one.
So Elmaleh Rav Huna sakarta the Rava says Rav Huna sakarta to Rava. According to Levi, that he says kelav shel makne, right, which means that you're going to acquire with a kinyan Sudan, the koneh bekarka is going to acquire it. Hakakani ara agav glima. So it comes out that he's going to acquire the land with the clothing. That's what he's doing. In Ken, if so, it's going to be considered nechasim that have achrayut, which is karka, that's going to be acquired with property, which is metalteli, which does not have achrayut. And we learned the exact opposite. That nechasim that do not have achrayut can acquire with things which have achrayut, but not the other way around. Meaning like this, we're first, even before getting into the nitty-bitties, we're asking a question. If you're going to tell me now it's the makne, and now what's going to happen is the guy is going to acquire the field with a kinyan chalipin of a sudar. It comes that the sudar is a movable object. So you're acquiring with a sudar a field. We never learned that. It's the exact opposite. We always learn you could acquire the field and then acquire the property, and then you could acquire the tangible items with that. Not the other way around. Answers the Gemara. Elmaleh tells him, Levi was here. He would take out, right? He would throw at you sparkles of fire. He would throw at you. Do you think that it's the glima that he's doing everything? It's the hana'ah. It's the benefit that he's accepting the glima from you. That's how he's making you koneh. Meaning it's not that you're doing an exchange, the sudar or the handkerchief for the land. In the benefit that he's accepting the handkerchief and he's doing a kinyan on the handkerchief, so that in essence is what's making it that now with that, how do you call this? With that benefit,
pleasure,
right?
Yeah.
The pleasure, you're actually he's finishing and he's giving it to you as a full ownership, as a full thing that he's giving it to you. So says the Gemara, you're right. So this machloka between Rav and Levi is actually going to be a machloka tanaim. Why? Tanai. It says in the Torah, "Vezot lefanim." This is not in the Torah, the Nach. Nevi'im uktuvim. In the Ketuvim, it's written, "Vezot lefanim yisel al geula v'latuna lekayim kol davar." Shalaf yishnalo. You're going to take off the shoe. Natal leo geula zo mechila. Right. We're talking about obviously the the chalitza rule, right? Of the closest of kin.
Actually, what I learned
The
is
closest
that
of kin.
shoe was the
Chalitza.
shoe was what was the case of chalip, and I always
Yes.
thought it was a handkerchief.
One second. So he says, Geula is mechira, וכן אומר לו יגאל, תמורה is חליפין, וכן אומר לו יחליפין, ויאמר אותו, לקיים כל דבר, שלב איש נעלו ונתן לו, מי נתן למי? Who's giving it to? So Boaz was giving it to the Goel, right? So Boaz is the koneh, the one that's acquiring, because he's getting all the property, and he's getting root, and he's getting everything. And the makneh was the Goel, the other guy. So the Yehuda says, Goel natan le Boaz. No. So basically it comes out that even in that case, there was a machloket. Who's giving to? Was it Boaz giving it to the Goel or the Goel giving it to Boaz? Remember, Boaz is the one that's acquiring, whether it's root and all the property and everything from the Machlon and Chilion, and the Goel is the one that's giving it to Boaz. Okay? So it comes out, it's actually a machloket. Okay? So Tana, Konin Bekli, Afal Pishem Bruta. Do you know that you could do Chalipin? Right? So basically, you just finished off with the machloket. That means it comes out, machloket. Okay? Machloket, Rav and Levi is going to be a machloket also Tanaim. So Tana, we learned in the Braita, Konim Bekli, Afal Pishem, you could acquire with a utensil, even though it doesn't have a Pruta. Even though it doesn't have a Pruta, doesn't matter, it's not worth anything. So it says, Nachman Loshano Bekli, it's only a Kli. But if it's going to be a perot that is not a Kli, no, you have to have something that has a value. Rav Sheshat says, no, even perot, even if it doesn't have a value, you could also acquire it as well. By Tama, what's the reasoning? Right? Which means even if it does not have any value. So says the Gemara, my Tama the Nachman, what's the reason of Nachman? Amakar, the Pasuk says, Na'alo. Na'ali, only the Na'al, which means it's utensil. But if it's not a utensil, no. So what's the reasoning of Rav Sheshat then? Rav Sheshat says the Pasuk, L'chayim kol davar. It could be anything. So even if it's not a Kli, you could still use it. It's not Shaveh Prutat, you don't need to. Because it's anything, kol davar, anything. The Rav Nachman, it's written L'chayim kol davar. It says, no, that L'kayim kol davar is the nikning b'min'al. You could acquire it with a shoe. But Rav Sheshat nami ktiv na'alo. Rav Sheshat, it's written na'alo, the shoe. It says Rav Sheshat, ma na'alo davar mesuyam, just like the shoe is something which is mesuyam, which is whole, complete, it has to be something complete. It cannot be a half of a pomegranate or a half of a walnut. That you can't do. It has to be something complete, even according to him. It doesn't have to be Shaveh Pruta, but it has to be complete. So Amar Rav Sheshat b'Reder Ravidi, says Sheshat the son of Ravidi, Keman Katvina Ha'idna, who's the one that we're going like nowadays that they come and they write, the manat kasher lemiknebe, with a utensil which is kosher to acquire. The mana is la'apukim in Rav Sheshat. The Amar korim beperot kasher is la'apukim in the Shmuel. The Amar shekonim, right, that you are going to be acquiring it, bimroka, memzayim mubet, 47b. What is mroka? Mroka is a kli which is made out of the dung of animals, of the excrement of animals.
Right.
Lemikneya is lapuke milevi, that he says v'kelav shel makneh. Kamashmala lemikneya velo laknuye. Lemikneya is liknot and not lehaknot. It's not that you're being makneh to somebody else, which means that you're giving the other guy to acquire. You are the one that's acquiring. Okay? Bay, Rav Papa says it's coming to exclude a coin because coins are not going to be acquired with chalipin. Okay, and Rav Papa says, Rav Zvid says, V'item Ravashi, the mute Isurei Hana'a. It's coming to exclude Isurei Hana'a. Ika de'amni, there are those that say, Be, Am Rav Papa lemute matbea. This comes to exclude a matbea. The kasher, it says Rav Zvid, and some people say it's Ravashi, is coming to exclude Isurei Hana'a. That means you cannot use something which is a sur bana'a as this. Aval morika, but something which is a utensil made out of the excrement of the animals, lo yitzrich, you didn't need to say it because you cannot acquire according to this shita. Okay? Fine. 2 dots. A simon. You remember that simon was like a coin. So it says over here, this coin, you could acquire the matbea.
A simon
What?
is like
We're going to see it now. We're going to see it now. Maya simon, what does it mean, a simon? Amarav ma'ot anitanot v'siman lebet hamerchatz. It's basically, you remember, it didn't have a form on it.
Right.
So it says over here, their money, which is given as a siman to the Bet HaMirchatz, which means that each one will take a bad coin, and they would come and they would go in order to know how many people are they. And therefore, they would know how many towels to come and to actually use, which means they're not going to use real coins. So it's like, like you go to one of these stores of how do you call these, Chuck E. Cheese type of thing.
Yeah,
So
they
have
give
all
you
these tokens, and these tokens are worthless. So that's called a simon. That's a simon. So Meitvei, so they're going to ask the following question: En michalli masa sheni al simon. You're not going to be michalel masa sheni al simon. Velo al ma'ot anitano b'siman lebet hamechatz. So not a money which is going to be given as siman to the bet hamechatz. Miklal, so you could infer that simon la ma'ot anitano b'siman lebet hamechatz. It's not going to be a money which is given to the bet hamechatz. And if you're going to tell me now, Perusha, come and find it, you're explaining, we didn't learn this. These are the words of Rabbi Dosa. You're not going to be mechalel. The shavin, but it's going to be equal. And Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, what does it mean asimon? Pulsa. Now we come and we say it's a coin that does not have a tzura. Okay, that means it's not ready to be. It's not, that means it's before it was ready for the imprint to put a print on it. Meaning it's not that it doesn't, it means that from the beginning it was made without this imprint. Okay, but as the Rabbi Yochanan and Taman, Rabbi Yochanan is going to his reasoning that says Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Dosa, Rabbi Shmuel, Amrud, Varechad, they both said the same thing. Rabbi Dosa is what we just mentioned right now, that basically that you're allowed to be Mechalel Maaseh Sheni on Simon. And Rabbi Shmuel, what is it? The Tanya, as we learned to the Braita, but Tzata Kesef Yadecha, Lerabot Kol Davar Nitzah Biyad. Anything where you could actually put Maaseh Sheni on any coin, even if it's not going to be imprinted on it. These are the words of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva says no. It needs a print on it in order to come into and to actually use it for being mechalel maaser sheni. Okay, fine. Next two dots. Ketzad. What is the case? Mashach emenu perot velo natan lo maot. What happens if he was doing the meshicha on the perot, but he didn't give him the money yet? Eno yechol lachzor, so he can't retract. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Dvar Torah mina Torah konot. Again, money acquires. So mipnei ma'amru. So why did they say meshicha kona? Why did it say that it's meshicha? Gezerah Hashem yomar nisrafu chidecha baliyah. Again, the same thing. Your wheat and everything got burnt in my attic. I apologize. By the time you came to my house, it got ruined. So we don't want to do that. Sof man deshada deleika baushum. It says, okay, fine, but who put the fire? Whoever put the fire, let him pay. What do you care? Even if okay, fine, it went and it got burned. What do I care? If the guy came and he put the fire, let him pay for it now. Says the Gemara. Maybe it's going to become an honest. So if it's going to stay in his possession, he's going to try to save it. Once it's going to be low, right? Low masan, meaning like this.
Like lightning.
Exactly. What does that mean? Right now, it's a force majeure. If it belongs to you, I'm going to say Kaddish, Kapara. What can I say, Richard? I apologize. Hey, but if it's mine, I'm gonna go crazy to try to save it. Right. So that's why they want to make sure that you're going to try to save it. The Shakish says, Meshicha mefurash min Torah. Really, Meshicha is mefurash in the Torah as well. That it helps, not only ma'ot. So he says, "My Tavada, what's he's doing in Shakish?" The pasuk says, "V'chitim kirum kala mitecha kirum yad mitecha tavara nikne miyad liyad." When it says in the pasuk that you're going to acquire things, and there we're talking about isura now or not, it's talking about al tonu shelchi. We're talking about things which are acquired from hand to hand. So it's going meshicha. It's being dragged from one hand to another hand. Rabbi Yochanan says, "No, miyad." What does it mean, miyad? Miyad is coming to teach you lemiyute karka, telling you to exclude karka that cannot be given over or hand by hand, that there's no ona by karka. Meaning I could charge you whatever I want. Right. With land, right. There's no such thing as general.
In general, I don't think it's absolute, but
okay, fine. Yeah, general. The Shakish comes and he says, if so, why doesn't the pasuk say miyad amitecha lo tunija? Why does it say kano miyad amitecha? Why lamali? Shma mina lemshicha. We're talking about meshicha. But Rabbi Yochanan said no. Kano mayavi. What do you do with the words kano? It needs it for that which we learned in the Braita. I only thought that it's a one side ona'ah. Remember, ona'ah works both sides. Whether I overcharged you or undercharged you, a 6. Okay? So he says, how do we know that even on the seller, it also applies? That also it's going to be that the buyer cannot cheat out the seller. Meaning it's not only, it doesn't work, it works both ways. If I'm going to overcharge or undercharge 1/6, it's annulled. You have to pay it, right? Meaning as if it's within the 6, you have to give it back. But if it's going to be right, too much, then it's going to be annulled. The Shakish tarti gamar mineh. The Shakish actually learned both halachot from the same thing. Okay? Also the concept of the buyer and the seller, and also the concept of that it's going to be anything which is meshicha, also given from hand to hand. So now we learned to the Mishnah. Shimon says, Kol ha-kesef biyado, yado ala-eliyona. Anybody that has the money in his hand, he always has the upper hand. Ha-mocheru dematzi adabe, so he could retract. But the lokeach cannot retract, meaning the seller could retract, but not the purchaser. So if you're going to tell me now that the money acquires, so therefore you could say that the seller could retract. But if you're going to tell me the lokeach cannot retract, but if you're going to tell me that the money does not acquire, so therefore even the buyer could also retract. But if you're going to tell me that it's not acquiring anything, so you should be able to retract. So Amaleh Shakish is going to answer you. Aliba de Rabbi Shimon lo kamina. We're not going in the shita of Rabbi Shimon. Kamina, we're only going in the shita of Rabbanan. Because there, again, we're not talking about Rabbi Shimon, because according to him, for sure, he's modeh, right? That ma'ot is konot min Torah as well. But it's only going to shitat chachamim, that it's only ma'ot and not meshicha. So Bishama de Shakish, I understand according to the Shakish, that's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, what's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan? So he says the difference between them is Dharma Rav Chasta, כדרך שתקנו משיכה במוכרים, כך תקנו משיכה בלקוחות. Just like they did it by the mocher, right? A person that sells, he could retract as long as the lokeach, the purchaser, did not do meshicha. So to the purchaser, as long as he did not do meshicha, he could also retract. Rabbi Shimon does not hold of Rav Chasta, but the rabbis do hold of Rav Chasta, and therefore they say both of them could retract. Meaning, as long as they both did not do the acquisition, they could both retract. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to ask against the Shakish, because remember the Shakish,
44a.
Yeah, the Shakish just came and he said, right? The Shakish just came and he said that he doesn't hold of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of Rav Chasta. Okay, therefore one of them could retract, not both of them. So he says, we learned in Mishnah, but they said Misha Para, meaning there's a Misha Para. I'm sure you heard the expression. Right. Meaning, even if you did not come, even though you don't have to abide by your words, because maybe there's no form of acquisition, but the one that took retribution against the Dor Mabul, he will take retribution against the people that they come and they don't stand by their words. Now, again, obviously we have to understand what's the connection. What's the connection that the one that paid back by the Dor Mabul is going to exact retribution for them? What's the connection? By somebody that doesn't stand by his words. So he says like this, you're going to tell me that the money acquires. Because of that, it makes sense. But what's the aval then? But Chachamim come and they say this. What's aval? Right? But if you're going to tell me now that the money does not acquire, so why does it say in the aval? He says it's mishum dvarim. It's because of the words. He could retract his words. And the dvarim, right? Do the aval? Meaning, when the rabbi said that, it's not just on stam words. But Tanya, we learned in a braita. Rabbi Shimon says, even though we just said that a talit is going to be acquired through dinar zahav, then dinar zahav is going to be acquired through a talit. אבל אמרו מי שפרע מאנשי דור המבול ומאנשי דור הפלגה ושזה לא ממונה ונמצא בגלל מי שאינו right, he's going to be פורע from the one that's not going to be עומד בדיבורו. Yeah? והנושא ונותן מדברים לא קנה. So you see here that it's not going to be רוח חכמים מנוחה ממנו. So obviously we're going to have to go into the different stages about when does acquisition actually work, when is it going to be a person who gets a misha para, and when does a person not get misha para, but and ruach hachamim nocha emenu. Have a wonderful day.